It's the amount that you receive in your bank account every month from your employer, plus any additional income like rental income, for instance. If you are a commission earner, your income would be almost like a target. You would therefore start with your expenses, which is in step 2, and then determine what your income should be to match it, and try and reach that income and sales. Step 2 would be to determine your expenses, and this is where it gets slightly more complicated. The best is to work off your bank statement. So print it out and grab 3 colors of highlighters. I have yellow, green, and pink. Then what you do is you select a color for each of the expense categories, which are essential expenses. I'm going to use yellow for that. Essential living expenses, I'm going to use green for that. And then there is the discretionary expenses. I'm going to use pink for that. Then you go through your bank statement line by line and you highlight it in the color that it represents. Here follows an explanation and a few examples of what these categories consist of. Essential expenses are expenses you have to pay, usually via debit order. For example, medical aid, insurance, rent or your bond, debt repayments, telephone contracts, Wi-Fi contracts, retirement savings, school fees, rates and taxes, electricity, bank costs, etc., etc. Essential living expenses are expenses you have to incur in order to live. For example, groceries, toiletries, fuel, airtime, prepaid electricity, etc., etc. Discretionary expenses are expenses you have by choice but not by obligation. For example, domestic, gardener, entertainment, TV, dining out, ordering in, movies, club memberships, hairdressers, spa visits, etc. Once you have identified the expenses line by line, you draw up a table for each. You can use paper or a spreadsheet, whatever you prefer. Then enter each expense in its correct category and add them up. You'll have something looking like this. Then add all 3 subtotals together to get a final expense amount. If this amount is lower than your income, great. You should be saving that difference in your emergency fund or other savings goal depending on the amount. At the end of this video, I will provide you with guidelines as to what percentage of your income you should be spending on each category. If your expenses amount is higher than your income, you either have to generate more income or reduce your expenses. Here are some tips on how to reduce your expenses. Start with the discretionary expenses, as they are the most flexible. Look at your expenses in this category. Look at things like the amount you spend on takeout and dining out, wine farm excursions, movies, gym membership. Do you really go enough to justify the amount that you spend on it? Or can you really even afford it? Shouldn't you just be exercising at home? Doing some Pilates on a YouTube channel or something at home. And do you really have to go to movies that often? I mean, that and you still have a TV app that you use at home, for instance. Look at those expenses and see how you can save. Then look at your essential living expense and see how you can reduce that. Then I'm going to look at my notes because I'm scared I forget one and I've thought of a few nice ones here. Are you driving efficiently? Are you making unnecessary trips? Consider shopping online to reduce those fuel expenses. You can really save a lot. Can you downgrade your cell phone contract perhaps, or buy less airtime and data and use it a bit more sufficiently or efficiently? Electricity. Switch off those lights. Consider savings mechanisms like a geyser blanket or energy-saving light bulbs. Your groceries, well, that's a whole separate topic I will discuss in part 2 of this series, because I think there's a lot of nice ideas and ways that you can cut on your food budget. And I know inflation is high at the moment, so the food's expensive. But yes, please watch my next video because that will show you some tips on the groceries. In the essential expense department, it will take some research and time and administration to reduce the costs. So this should be the last category you tinker with. But here are a few things you could do. In this category, you will need to speak to your advisor and ask them to compare what you have at the moment and see if there's a way that you can maybe streamline your payments, get cheaper insurance, downgrade your medical aid plan if it's really necessary, and if it still meets your needs. There might be a cheaper alternative out there. Compare your telephone account, your Wi-Fi contract, your TV contracts, and see if there isn't a cheaper alternative. Look at other contracts like your television apps, your music apps, and ask yourself, do you really need more than one? Or should you perhaps, those ones that's month to month, just stop it for a few months so that you can get your budget in order? And then lastly, your banking fees. You'll be surprised how much you spend on banking fees. Now with doing this exercise, you will actually see. And sometimes it's worth considering another package that offers a better deal. So go speak to your consultant at the bank and see if there's not a better package out there for you. You should be able to save a few bucks with the tips that I've given you now and with this exercise. If you can continue to do this for 3 months in a row and try and be better every month, evaluate yourself how you did according to the budget that you've set, and evaluate yourself every month to see how you can improve, and try and improve every month. Make it a challenge for yourself to improve on that budget. Well, until you've reached a budget that you feel, I can live with this. It might be tight, but at least I'm living within my means, and then try and stick to that. And then just monitor yourself and amend it on an annual basis, because it will be silly to think you must have the same budget year after year if everything else increases. And especially if your salary increases, you'll need to amend what you can allow yourself to do in the certain categories. Here is a rough guideline as to how you should be spending your money. Your total debt repayments, this is excluding your car and your house payments, shouldn't be more than your 10% of your income. Your savings and retirement provision should be at least 15% of your income. Your housing costs, this is your rent, your bond, your maintenance, your rates, your electricity, your insurance, everything together, should not exceed 35% of your income. Your car expenses, that's the hire purchase, the insurance, the fuel, the maintenance, everything together, shouldn't be more than 15% of your income. Your other cash spending shouldn't be more than 25% of your income. If you exceed these guidelines, you might want to go back to the previous step and see where and how you can cut your expenses. And if you cannot reduce your expenses, you are not living within your means and should take drastic steps to downscale your lifestyle or increase your income.